Hey, how you doing, Coach?
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. How you doing, Coach Williams?
I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Just want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to hop on our Youth and Mentorship podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So now, Coach, tell us a little bit about growing up in San Diego, because obviously your journey goes all the way from Cali to Michigan. So tell us a little bit about growing up in San Diego and your intro into the game of basketball.
Uh, okay. Going back a little ways. So I moved to San Diego when I was 8, and then when I was 10, I entered a free throw shooting contest with one of my friends who didn't want to be the only girl. I had no interest in basketball, and but I played sports with all the boys and stuff, and I'm like, whatever, sure. So I end up like making 2 out of 10 or something, and it was enough to get me to like the next round. And then I end up going to like the districts or whatever, you know what I mean, like the next round, and I go to the first round and I made, say like 2 out of 12. And then there was 2 rounds, and then my dad took me outside and he's like, hey, do you want to win? And I was like, yeah, like I was always competitive. And he said, okay, well, put your hand like this and then just, follow through at the end. Very, very foundational level teaching at that point. And I went back in and I made 10 out of 12. And then I think it was like in that moment, I kind of like discovered this, like, oh, hey, I kind of like this, like not just the winning, but the sport. And then so I fell in love with it. I brought home a flyer to my parents to like sign me up for the local rec league. And I was like one of the only girls. And I was so horrible. I was just horrible. And I'm telling this part of the story because, we talk about youth sports. So I think it's important to know, kind of where people start. And so I go and I'm like throwing the ball over the basket. Like I've never played the game before. And I got nobody gets cut, right? Like nobody gets cut. So I make a team, and I was so gracious to have a really good coach be my first coach. And he really just developed me, and I ended up winning newcomer of the year my first year. And then I ended up winning MVP my second year. So it was like, it kind of just, start. Yeah, it was just like, okay, here we are. And then I got to join the AAU team. And there was just a natural talent, but there was a natural talent coupled with, I'm in love with this. So I want to spend all my time doing it. So as soon as I got introduced to the game, I was playing recess. That's all I was doing, was playing basketball on the blacktop and going to parks and shooting around by myself, like you name it. I ended up going to Mount Miguel High School in San Diego. We won 3 CIF championships, went to 4. I ended up getting a full scholarship to UCLA out of high school, transferred after my freshman year, went to San Diego State, won a Mountain West championship there, went to the second round of the NCAAs, and the San Diego State team under Beth Burns was so monumental because she turned that program around. So I was able to be a part of that ride, and just really, develop some mental toughness under her. Graduated from San Diego State, and then I'll let you ask your next question, because then it was a long journey.
It's a journey.
That's where San Diego. That was San Diego's kind of, not end point, but
Now we definitely got to play this episode right after another episode we had a Olympic gold medalist from the 4x100 meter relay, and she's also like the Olympic gold medalist in the long jump. And it's funny because she started out playing basketball, but she had the opposite experience you did, where she was so horrible at basketball that she switched to track and field, right. And then she found her true calling. But with you, it was kind of like love at first sight. This right. is where it's at. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Right. Now, Coach, tell us a little bit about how you ended up at Detroit Country Day, like making that cross-country trip from West Coast to the Midwest.
Right. So my son lives here. He moved here. My son came ahead of me. And so the move wasn't a career move, but
Okay.
but it was right in alignment. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
nothing is, I do nothing without intention and nothing without purpose. And so it worked. It worked out. So I was coaching at Cal State Northridge in LA. Decided to move to Detroit to be closer to my son. And Country Day was open. So I applied.
Oh, wow.
I applied and went through the process. And I hadn't been a head coach before. I coached at the high school level for some years as an assistant because I was doing the entrepreneur thing and running my own business for 8 years. And then I don't know what happened. Some shift happened in me internally, and it was like, hey, I want to do what I love to do. Like, I want to do what I love to do for the rest of my life. Like, it was like that. Like, I want to jump all the way in and do this full time. So that's when I got into college and as an assistant. And then Country Day really excited me because it was my first head coaching position, but it was also obviously a prominent, nationally recognized institution. So it's been an adjustment, but it's been great. It's been great.
So now, we've had a couple of coaches on this youth and mentorship podcast, and sometimes they shy away from kind of breaking down like a comparison. Now, how would you compare high school ball in the San Diego area with high school ball in the Metro Detroit area? Whether it doesn't necessarily have to be one better than the other. How would you compare as far as like the biggest differences?
Well, I spent time in Southern California, so like San Diego, LA, like the whole like Southern California area. Some of the biggest differences, or a few of the biggest differences. That's a good question.
Put you on the spot early.
Yeah. In terms of play,
style of play, depth in like the recruiting pool, depth in talent.
Right. So, I mean, California obviously has more people, like the population is higher. So I think you have just more players. But it's not the culture, and it's like, I think you have like cultural differences, not necessarily within basketball, but I think like in Southern California, it's, you're outside all the time. The workforce is different. You know what I mean? In Detroit Metro, you have like the big three and generational employment and things like that. And so the way people move is just a little bit different. In Detroit, you can get to states within, multiple states within a drive.
Facts.
And you know what I mean? So you can't, so I think you're exposed to like, different, you have the opportunity to get to more places easier. So you're not always playing against the same people. Like I feel like the reach is wider here, but in California, it's just tough because it's California. And so I feel like it's, you're in LA, you're near Hollywood, like you have the Sierra Canyons where Dwayne Wade and LeBron James' son goes. And if you know what I mean? So you have more attention, like it just has more like attention. But in terms of talent, talent is talent. I just think there's a wider pool in California because there's more people. But basketball is basketball. Like I'll take it wherever you can get it. I think that I will say Detroit probably is a little more gritty. Like they're a little more, I'm not going to say tougher per se, but they're a little more gritty. Like I think it's going through my first full year and going through my first winter. You gotta be tough to come from here. You know what I mean? Like you can be in the gym all day and night because it's freezing outside, right? But in in California, there's so much to do. So you may not have those players like, hey, I'm going to live in the gym. I think that's something that I've recognized. Like, I feel like my players are a little more here. They're more, and I coached in Texas too. And I know, and that was a difference in California and Texas too, where it was like, God, sports, family, school, right? Like it was like,
Okay, got the
sports is the
priority.
next thing. But nobody shies away from living in the gym. But in California, you got, 10 professional teams in LA alone. You have concerts, you have, you know what I'm saying? There's so much, you can go to the beach, there's so much, we have like 12 amusement parks within a 60-mile radius. Like there's just so much to do. It's a smaller city here. So I think the desire to be in the gym is higher here.
Okay.
Yeah, it took me a while to get to that answer. Hopefully you can kind of like edit some of that out.
It makes perfect sense. There's a lot more to do when the weather is warm year round,
Right.
compared to seasonal to 4 seasons here. So
right. And not to say that the California players don't be in the gym and working their butt off. That is not, that's not what, but I think if I had to just be transparent, I see it more here than I do there at the high school level.
Yeah. Now, Coach, some of our viewers are out in the Gambia, South Sudan, Kenya, and Uganda, and kind of like the consensus points I get from the young viewers there is, they're kind of, they have dreams, obviously, of playing high school ball or playing college ball here. However, they're kind of worried about their development because they have limited resources. What are some tips for skills development and conditioning for ball players overseas that have limited resources?
Yeah, and the most in shape players will make the best players, okay. Right? Okay. And so the better shape you're in, the more you can do. So people will be in subpar shape, and they'll do, shooting exercises and dribbling and all of this stuff, and they'll get tired really quickly, and then they lose the quality of the workout. And so when I think the peak of my game, at least in high school, was my junior year, and I was in phenomenal shape. Like basketball wise, I did the same things. I did like the same 2 things at high reps. I shot like 2,000 shots a day. So I wasn't doing like a bunch of like cone drills and, and I was doing the same dribbling drill. Like I was just getting, kind of tight with the ball, but I was shooting so much. But other than that, I was pushing, my trainer would, and when I say trainer, I'm not talking about the type of trainers you see here. Like we really did little basketball stuff. Like I would shoot, I would dribble, and I would play against boys. That's all I would do. And so like some of my conditioning, I started with a mile on Monday, a mile on Tuesday, and then it would go 2 miles and then 3. And then that would be my week. And I would do that in the morning. And then I would, I would shoot in the morning. I would get my, like 1,000 shots in the morning, and then I'd go to school. And then after school, I would do more shooting. And then my trainer would wrap a towel around a wood panel, and I would push it across the floor. And the power and endurance that gave me just to do that so much. Like I was lapping people in line drills when it was all said and done. And then at 8:00 at night, so then I would go home, do homework or whatever. And then at 8:00 at night, I would play for 2 hours against, I would just scrimmage. And then so when summer came around to play AAU, I was, when summer came around to when it was time to compete, like nobody could keep up. Like I always tell people, Maya Moore trains her body like she's playing 6-quarter games, so by the time you get to the halftime, like she's, just starting, when you're in the 4th quarter, she's like, hey, I just came off at halftime. And so it's less for me, my philosophy is it's less about the skills. If you focus on like one or two things and you master those things, like if you just shoot, you're going to make more shots. But I think people think 200, 300 shots a day is enough. It's not. You know what I mean? Like you need to shoot high volume, just do the same things over and over and over again, be in excellent shape, and you'll see your game change. And then play. Like just play, you know? So I think that's something. I didn't have a lot of resources growing up. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have, and I'm not super old by any, sense, but we didn't have YouTube videos. We didn't have a whole bunch of trainers. Like we would just go outside and play. And then when I got to high school, I just really, it's going to separate me. So that's what I would say.
Okay. And I'm glad you really, stressed that, because I'm starting to see, a lot of like the drills that I see kind of commercialized. They got like 5 tennis balls and you're juggling the tennis ball.
Right. Right. Yeah, don't get me started.
So if you had, 4 years to do all over again, like going back to brief stint at UCLA and then transferring back home, and becoming going back home. Now, would you how would you go about that? How would your approach change if, talking about like a young Jerica Williams, fresh out of high school? What would you do differently as a student athlete if you have 4 years?
So I would want to disclaimer it with this. Like, I don't have any regrets, right? And I always say, so if I was 18 again, and I knew exactly what I knew at 18, then I would do it the same, because you only know what you know.
Right.
If I had the knowledge I have now at 18, I would have stayed at UCLA, only because the reasons in which I transferred, I understand, were based on emotion, and I didn't have the resources at the time to help me understand kind of what was happening in the moment, right? And 18-year-old young women, we're just emotional, and I think that not that I hadn't fought through adversity before, but I hadn't faced that. So I think, especially coming out of high school when you're the best, everybody's the best, you know what I mean? Like the best. And then you get